Marble Madness is one of the most unique experiences on the NES, and one of the most exciting two-player games on the system. Before it was on the NES, Marble Madness was a revolutionary game in the arcade. Following the video game crash of 1983, Atari's home entertainment division was in trouble, but their arcade division was still alive. They were looking to create unique experiences that would stand out in the arcades of the 80s and would be totally unlike the games available for home systems. Marble Madness featured a trackball controller and had 3D environments with semi-realistic physics. It was the first commercially available video game programmed in the C language and was the first to have true stereo sound. For a game released in 1984, Marble Madness was far ahead of its time. The game's lead designer was Mark Cerny, and even if you don't know his name, you'll certainly know his resume. He'd go on to design Kid Chameleon for the Sega Genesis, and then he produced Sonic the Hedgehog too. Then he worked on Crash Bandicoot, Jak and Daxter, Ratchet and Clank, and the first Uncharted game before becoming Sony's lead architect for the PlayStation 4. Of course, Cerny didn't create the game alone, and software engineer Bob Flanagan was able to help make Cerny's radical ideas a reality. Before Marble Madness, Bob Flanagan had worked on other classic arcade games like Gauntlet, and would go on to work on the later games in EA's wildly successful Sims series. Inspired by the art of M.C. Escher, Cerny's first idea was to make a miniature golf game, but Atari thought that a turn-based golf game would be too slow-paced for the arcade. Cerny took that note and reimagined the game as a frantic race against the clock or a second player. This time, Atari loved the idea. Cerny and Flanagan had a lot of trouble trying to create a game with 3D physics on early 80s computing hardware. Many of their ideas had to be cut, but the final game was still very impressive for a 1984 release. When Marble Madness finally hit arcades, it was popular, but that popularity quickly dropped off just a few months later. Players liked the game, but it was very short with only 6 levels, and it wasn't long before people had mastered it and moved on to something else. Marble Madness got several home releases, and the NES version was developed by Rare. You won't see Rare's name anywhere in the game, and instead it's credited to Atari's NES developer Tengen, and published by board game manufacturer Milton Bradley. The NES port looks great, offering all 6 levels from the arcade original with only minor changes. It may not have the trackball controls, but Marble Madness plays quite well using the standard Nintendo controller or the NES Advantage joystick. Composer David Wise translated the music from the arcade game completely by ear. The NES has very different sound hardware than a Marble Madness arcade machine, but Wise's tracks sound recognizable. Marble Madness was fairly popular when it released for the NES in 1989. The game can be finished in under 5 minutes, but that doesn't make it bad. Sometimes a game you can play through quickly is exactly what you want. In 1991, Bob Flanagan led development on the sequel called Marble Man, Marble Madness 2. This sequel had 17 all-new levels and allowed for 3-player simultaneous action. Although the game was finished, it was never released in the arcade. Street Fighter II had taken the arcade scene by storm in early '91, and Atari didn't think a new Marble Madness could compete. Instead, they focused on developing a beat-em-up called Guardians of the Hood. In hindsight, I think they should have just stayed with Marble Madness. Luckily, about a dozen Marble Madness 2 prototypes were made, and in 2022, the ROM was leaked online. Over 30 years after its original development, fans can finally enjoy this unreleased sequel. While the sequel to Marble Madness never was officially released in the arcade, Rare followed it up with their own game, Snake Rattle and Roll, which has many similarities, and Sega has released over a dozen different games in their Super Monkey Ball series. In modern times, players and critics still appreciate Marble Madness for a fast and fun experience. It may not have made IGN's list of the top 100 NES games of all time, but it would be on my own list for sure. Modern players that attempt this game will still have to deal with all of the challenges the NES is notorious for. This game may be short, but has tons of obstacles and hazards for you to avoid. You don't get very much time to finish the later courses, so if you make just a few wrong moves, it'll be game over. But what if I told you the best way to get through all 6 treacherous courses? What if I showed you how to perform secret tricks like the hot drop or the silly skip? And what if I told you there was a secret level that can only be found in a few versions of the game? Well, on today's episode of You Can Beat Video Games, we'll learn all of that and more. If you're new to the channel, we're doing deep dives on retro video games and giving you the professional strategies that can be used by the casual gamer. Please make sure to subscribe and check out YouCanBeatVideoGames.com for episode lists, news, and official You Can Beat Video Games merchandise. And please join our Patreon for access to an exclusive Discord and a chance to vote on future episodes. Let's get started. All right, Marble Madness. Before we jump into the game, let's talk quickly about wands. When a wand appears, you'll get 10 seconds added back to the clock. In the arcade, the wand would usually show up when you first get low on time, but on the NES, it's more random. You have a 1 in 256 chance of getting a wand on the NES at any given time, which makes it sound unlikely to happen, but the game is checking constantly, so you have a lot of chances for it to appear. The randomness is affected by which buttons or directions you press, but as of this recording, there does not seem to be a consistent way to make the wand appear during a normal playthrough. Alright, let's begin with the practice race. After you enter your name, you'll choose between 90 and 45 degrees. Unless you've been playing on 45 degrees your entire life, I highly recommend that you choose 90. This is not a game like Q*bert where you can only move in 4 directions. You'll need all 8 directions here in Marble Madness. And that's what a good run on the practice race looks like. The nice thing about the practice race is that unlike any of the other courses in this game, the time does not carry over to the next race, so you can use this opportunity to get familiar with the controls, and you'll notice that if you hold down the A button, you'll go faster. Use that burst of speed to launch off of a ramp, and if you land on the numbers to the side, you'll be awarded bonus points. A fast run on the practice race will leave you with 54 seconds left on the clock, but if you want to finish with 55 seconds left, you'll have to go so fast that you'll roll faster than the screen can scroll, and you'll have to do the bottom of the maze completely blind, but it is possible. The beginner race is our first serious course. Although it's not that difficult to finish this one, if you waste a lot of time here, you won't have enough time to finish the more difficult courses. If you play it well, you can finish this course in under 20 in-game seconds, and the most challenging part is probably this icy crater at the end. But we'll get back to that in a minute. Let's start back at the beginning. As you get started, you want to head to the right so that you can sneak by Big Steely. It is possible to kill him if you hit him just the right way, but it's difficult to do, so you just want to sneak by and roll down the left side of this hill. Watch out for these enemies, and you want to try to get to the bridge before there's 54 seconds left on the clock, otherwise you'll have to wait until there's 50 seconds left. There's two paths here, so let's take a look at a split screen. The bumpy path down the tube looks more challenging, but it's so much faster that even if you take a death there, you'll probably still finish more quickly than on the left. Let's take a look at how to get across. Hold A and just press left to get across there. It's really that simple. And when you get down the pipe, it's time to cross the ice. Now here's the easy way to do it. Hold no directions but hold the A button, and as soon as you touch the wall on the right side, continue to hold A and hold down and left. You'll roll all the way to the flag. Now if you mess it up, the best way to get across is to just roll along this upper left edge. So try that strategy if the first one doesn't work. The fastest way to do it is to hold left and A as you're coming out of the pipe, and as soon as your marble gets in front of the left edge of the tube, hold down an A, and that will also take you to the flag. So those are 3 different strategies you can use to get past the ice. Just like the beginner race before it, the intermediate race takes about 20 in-game seconds to finish, but the traps are a bit more challenging this time. Let's take a look at what a good run of this course looks like, and then we'll dive into each individual section. This green carpet is one of the most memorable parts of the game, and we'll get to the strategy for passing that in a moment. It won't save you any time, but it is possible to cross over to the other side at the beginning here if you want the player 2 perspective on things. Don't go too quickly through these hallways. If you bounce around off the walls, you can lose a lot of time there. Down here we'll have our first encounter with acid pools that can disintegrate our marble. They only patrol a small area, and if you roll along the top, you should be able to find an opening. Once you're past the acid pools, head down the pipe, and we're going to do another split screen. You'll see from this split screen that the lower path is not much slower than the upper one, but I think that it's more difficult. You need to make sure you have enough momentum to roll up that last hill, or your marble will stop in the middle of it. I recommend going this way. You want to wait for a wave to pass in front of your marble, get onto the carpet, quickly roll to the end, and when you see the path, tap left to halt your momentum, then roll down to the flag. The last trick on this course is called the hot drop. It's not very practical, but it does look cool. What you want to do is just barely roll onto the carpet, let a wave pick you up, and when you get to the top of the wave, you're going to hold A and right, and when you hit the wall, hold down an A. And if you did it just right so that your ball lands to the right of the flagpole, it'll count as the goal. The aerial race may be the most difficult one in the game. Even if you get through it, if you waste a lot of time here, it could cost you the game. As usual, we're going to look at a good run first, and then we'll break it down and analyze it. This is the course with the pistons. The pistons operate on a consistent pattern, and if you understand how it works, it's not too hard to find an opening. You'll want to hold the A button to make sure you have enough momentum to get across those jumps, and at the very end, you'll encounter the hammers before reaching the goal. A good run on the aerial race will take about 30 in-game seconds. Hold up and right as you go down the first hill so that you slow yourself down, and you'll regain control of your marble more quickly when you hit the bottom. These vacuums look more dangerous than they are. Just hold A as you roll across these straight paths and you should be safe from the vacuums. We got the wand, very nice, and if you go just to the right on that corner, that'll bring you down here to the catapult, and it's time for another split screen. The upper path is very windy and you'll need to take your time to avoid falling off the edge, but it's not actually much slower than going on the route with the pistons, assuming that you have to wait for a moment for the pistons to get out of your way. The piston path is a little bit faster, but if you're uncomfortable going that way, the other path is a reasonable option. Let's take a look at the pattern that the pistons use. This first set does a very intricate pattern. I like to go after the middle set pops up. Try to wait down here for this set of pistons. I like to go after the two in the middle pop up. That seems to work best for me. So we'll wait for the middle ones to pop up and then go. And we got the wand again. Well, very generous. And down here, this last set of pistons will do single sets, then two at a time, then all of the pistons. Which can launch you into the air, but you just want to hold A and quickly roll by after you see a set of two pop up, and that should get you over to here. Make sure to roll quickly across that ledge and you'll make it down to the bottom, and then it's time for the hammers. Depending on what the hammers are doing when you get down here will determine when you should go. If there's two sets together, you can go right after the first set pops up, and if you see the individual hammers, follow behind them, but just wait for the third one for a moment and then go through. And that brings us to the silly race, where the physics have been reversed. So now when you roll uphill, it'll feel like rolling downhill, and rolling downhill will feel like rolling up. This part over here can be difficult, so try to stay on track, and it's a little bit faster to take the upper path there, but the lower path may be a bit easier. You need to watch out for the birds, and then as you roll down this last ramp, roll off to the side because it's actually difficult to roll down that, and then take your time as you roll to the flag. You don't want to panic at the end. Let's take a closer look at the silly race. I think it's easier to roll straight across at the beginning, but if you go up the left side, it's slightly faster. You get an additional 3 seconds for each enemy that you roll over here, but if you waste a lot of time chasing them, you won't really gain any time on the clock, so I usually just go around the right side and try to hit as many enemies as I can. This part's tricky. Position yourself right here, hold A and hold up, and when you get to the flat part, make sure to tap down so that you slow your momentum. If you get stuck respawning over there on the left side, make sure to hold right and A as you respawn. That's the easiest way to get out of it. Roll behind the first birds and there's nothing down this ramp except for death. Try to go between these sets of birds, and up here we can do a trick called the silly skip. Here it is again in slow motion. It looks easy when I do it there, but it's actually very precise. So unless you're very low on time and desperate, or you have a lot of time to burn and just want to try it, I don't recommend doing the silly skip. Here in the silly race, the music keeps speeding up, even if you pause the game and walk away. So this is what it sounds like when it's going very fast. Kinda fun to try, but makes it feel a lot more frantic, so I don't recommend pausing during that race. They give you 20 seconds for the ultimate race, but if you don't have at least 30 on the clock, you better hope you get a wand. At the very beginning, you need to make sure you hold A as you roll off this ramp, or you won't make it to the hole. So just line up with the back of it, hold A to roll up on top of the ramp, and continue holding A as you launch yourself into space. Take it slow around these corners and then roll down this ramp. This vibrating floor is not lava, but you won't be able to stop moving while you're on it. If you get fried by the acid pool at the end, just quickly roll by when you respawn and cut straight across the ice field. Once you get past Steely, it's time for the moving floor. For this first part, you don't want to go too fast. Wait for a space to appear in front of your marble, and as soon as it fills in, start rolling across without holding A, and press A right here at the very end to get a burst of speed. Wait here and then quickly roll up the ramp and make sure you get over to the left at the end or you'll fall in, and this is the last stretch. Once again, you want to wait for a hole to appear in front of your marble, and as soon as it fills in, roll quickly down to the left, but slow down at the end before you make the last turn, or you'll roll off the edge. Now that we know how to do it, let's see what the ultimate race looks like when we put it all together. So at the beginning, you're going to roll up the back of the ramp and make sure you hold A as you launch yourself towards the hole. Go slow around these first few curves and head down the ramp. Quickly get past the acid pool, then roll straight across, and then straight through the ice. At the end, wait a second for everything to catch up to you, and we're going to wait for a space to open in front of us. Roll slowly over the first part, burst of speed at the end. Up the ramp, down the side, wait over on the left, and then wait for a space and then roll to the end, slow at the corner, and turn to the flags. And that's it. We've done it. We've beaten Marble Madness. All we can do now is sit back, relax, and enjoy the cheesy ending. You'll get bonus points at the end for any time left on the clock, and you'll lose 1,000 points for each time that you died during the game. But before we go, what about that secret level? You won't be able to get to the secret level on the NES version of the game, or on the arcade version either. You can only do it on the Apple II or the Commodore 64 version of the game. You're looking at the Apple version here, which actually looks pretty good, and the sound is a little bit fuzzy, but it sounds familiar. Unfortunately, the controls leave a bit to be desired. To get to the secret level, you need to launch yourself off of this ramp over to the left side. It looks easy in the video, but it's actually kind of difficult to do. Then you need to roll up to this square, right about here. It's not extremely precise, so as long as you're in the right general area when the clock strikes 13, you'll go down a hidden elevator and enter the water maze. The water maze is extremely difficult. You get a lot of time, but if you die at all here, it's instant game over. Don't try to go across the bridge at the beginning. Instead, you want to roll onto this leaf, which is actually a boat. And it'll take you over across to the other side, and then you'll bounce back to the first bank where you started at. You have to do this a couple times, and that will take you to the platform that's in the water, which is actually a hole that leads down below. If you can manage to get down below, there's a fast-moving current of water that you need to deal with. Then you need to roll up onto the path and get onto a moving platform, which will take you down to the bottom where you need to fight some steel balls. And that's the end of the level. Now, I've read that you need to be playing a 2-player game to actually finish this level, but I can neither confirm nor deny that, because it was difficult enough for me to get 1 ball over to the secret level, let alone 2, and you're looking at my very best run of the water level right now, which is going to end very shortly when I roll off the end of this water path. Oh no, maybe we'll make it up there. And nope, that's it. We fell into a hole, and your history. Well, I hope this video was able to help you finally beat Marble Madness, or at least improve your best time. If it did, make sure to give it a like, and make sure to subscribe for more videos, because there will always be more unique arcade experiences for us to enjoy, and that's why we'll be back again next week with another video game you can beat. Thanks for watching.